I'm here with Tony Laidig, and you'll remember him from a recent webinar that we did together. He is the public domain expert. He's also a photographer and lots of other things. He's actually on a road trip and coming through Tennessee, so I thought I'd snag him for a few minutes and just talk a little bit about productivity and stuff like that. So you've been working online and very successfully, by the way, 4 or 5 years?
About 6 years.
6 years, right. And so you came, like the rest of us, from a traditional 9-to-5 or longer job.
Right.
And would be curious to know, was it a big transition for you, like working from home and going into the whole self-employment thing?
In some respects it was, but the job that I had before I started my own business was a graphic design business. I worked for a publisher, actually. And the thing that was kind of cool about that job was that they gave me a lot of freedom, you know, so I could come and go as I like. I worked a lot, but they gave me a lot of freedom, and so as a result, transitioning into having my own business wasn't difficult that way from a work perspective. What was challenging, though, was negotiating 2 daughters, 2 dogs, 3 cats, a noisy house, and probably the biggest challenge of all was accessibility. You know, I was accessible to all of the above. So I would get in the midst of trying to get work done, and my daughter would need something, you know, or the dog would need taken out, or whatever the case may be, which is ultimately why I got my own office.
I have the same problem, of course, and as you guys know, I have a pug in the house now in addition to my Great Dane, and so my kids are older. They're 16 and 21, but when they were younger, that was a big issue for me as well. I think they were 5 months and 5 years old when I first started my business, so I had my daughter, I'd have her on my hip, you know, over facing away from the keyboard because she would wreak havoc on the keyboard, you know, the whole time I was trying to work. One of the things that I did, and I've mentioned this before, is I used a timer, an egg timer, on my desk, because saying just a minute, you know, if your kids need something. Now, if it's an emergency, you know, like if the microwave blows up or somebody falls and breaks their foot in 3 places, which has happened at my house, that's a different thing. But general, hey mom stuff, I solved with an egg timer. So I would turn it on if I were going to work in a time block of 30 minutes or an hour or something like that. And then they just kind of got used to it. So instead of saying, you know, when can we do this, or hey mom, they would see the egg timer and they would wait. And then when it went off, then they would, you know, bombard me with whatever.
Right.
Productivity, you know, a lot of people struggle with self-discipline, with working when you're at home because the environment is, you know, conducive to relaxing or being off work. Right. That's never been the case for me.
Right.
There was always something to do. Time blocks, though, speaking of those, do you work in time blocks or?
Absolutely. Yeah, I found that in order to get stuff done, I really had to structure my day, just like you were saying, and especially now. I'm a morning person, so I get a lot done in the morning. I rise early, and of course, I shoot photos every day, being a photographer, but I will usually block out an hour or 2 and just focus, boom, you know, to get whatever task is done. And my friend Dave Laconnie wrote a book called The Power of an Hour, where he actually breaks down an hour into like 40-minute segments and then a 20-minute rest period or something like that, and you have everything you need for that 40 minutes before you start it, and then nothing interrupts, nothing at all. And I kind of use an adapted version of that, you know, because I found that if I don't have some kind of structure, I'm pretty easily distracted. I'm a creative guy, you know, and it's like, oh, I wonder who's on Facebook now, you know, or whatever. So I have to do that. And then usually I have a reward system built into my productivity so that once I've crunched out an hour or 2 of work, then in many cases I'll actually leave the house, you know, just to kind of get out, whether it's even going out into the front yard or whatever the case would be, or run down to the grocery store, whatever. I'll just step out just for a few minutes, and it helps reset myself so that when I come back, boom, I can hit it again.
Right, that makes sense. I don't leave the house that much. Although I do have my reset in the middle of every day. I take a nap, a 2-hour nap.
Same difference, basically.
Yeah, and I'm a morning person as well. So for me, if I have a 2-hour nap, it's not like a power nap. It's like a sleep.
Right.
And so for me, it's like I get 2 mornings out of every day.
Right.
So my most productive time of the day happens twice a day,
right,
which is really good. It's
smart.
Interesting about that book. I actually do that it just kind of evolved for me over the years. So I'll do my time block, you know, I'll knock out whatever the task is, and then I'll get up and, do a load of laundry, do the dishes, cook lunch, something to that effect.
Right.
So I kind of naturally work in very focused segments and then, go off and do something else and then come back.
Right.
Otherwise, I just really get brain dead.
Right.
Get brain fog after, like, you try to work for 5 hours straight.
Yeah, I can't do that.
I think about, like at my last real job, I think, I worked 8 hours at least a day. I can't imagine how I did that.
See, I kind of did the same thing in my last job because I had so much latitude being a creative, and they love my work, so they really let me do pretty much anything I wanted, which most of the other employees really resented because I had special privileges. But I would leave and go for a walk. Where we were located, it was a rural area, and so I could just go walk for an hour or two just thinking about, I want to create this design or whatever, and then an idea would come, I go back to my office and I do it. And I really do the same thing now. Sometimes that creative walk is just office to kitchen back and forth. Other times it's just getting outside or walking around Target or whatever, but that's just how I work, and I've developed that.
Really good. I noticed that a lot of times some of my most creative work, the thoughts behind the work at least, don't happen in my office.
Right.
They happen down at the dam or on a 2-mile walk with my Dane or somewhere like this, or Joe's O'Hara's, which is my absolute favorite second office. Great little coffee shop in the city. And I just find that a lot of times my best ideas come when I'm not sitting in the office. So changing locations helps a lot. That's something that I've really had to force myself to do because, like I said, I don't leave the house all that much.
Right. Well, it's like a pattern interrupt. And
it is.
Sometimes we need that because it's one thing that I've practiced for years, that if you feel your creativity dipping, whether it's for writing a blog post or coming up with a new product idea or whatever, if you get out and do something completely different or random or go to a different location, the local coffee shop or whatever, just that act can really help spark creativity again because you've broken that routine, you've broken that pattern, and I've done that all the time.
So let's talk about products. You mentioned product creation, and you are good at it. I mean, I see you putting out lots of different products, different things that you do, the public domain, and various products on that topic, and then, of course, photography and quite a few other things as well. So when it comes to creating products, a lot of us struggle with that, me included.
Right.
And getting it done, basically. So I have quite a few products in progress. Any advice, or what have you found? I mean, did it just come easy for you naturally?
No, I mean, my first product that I created took me 11 months.
Wow.
Which is a long time. And I remember,
feel so bad.
Yeah, well, I'll tell you, I got a swift kick in the behind by a friend of mine now, Joel Calm, but it was the first time that I had met him. And a friend of ours, a mutual friend, introduced me, and I had just released my first product. And he's like, wow, this is pretty awesome. How long did it take you to create it? And I told him, and he's like, dude, what's wrong with you? He's like, 11 months, really? You're going to go broke. And I was a little offended at first, I'm like, how arrogant, But, of course, I realized later that he was correct. And so I started trying to figure out ways to accelerate the creativity process, the creation process, all of that. And the following month, I banged out 3 products, just boom, boom, boom. And now some of them were based on PLR and different things like that. But still, I got it done. And now I have well over 100 products. But the one thing that I found is that it's very easy for me to get distracted, just like the rest of you. I am a creative, so I have notebooks full of ideas, just like the rest of you. And the difference that I found between myself and a lot of other people is that my products are making me money and your product ideas aren't, and that's because you're not getting them done. And so I've really built into my product creation cycle things that force me to create. I force myself to create the products or risk, public embarrassment. Like, for instance, I teach a lot of webinars. And if I get a product idea, I will often teach it as a webinar. And so I'll announce it to the world. Hey, I'm going to release this new product, and it's on XYZ. It's on how to take better photos. And it starts November 1st. And so if you'd like to join me live, here's a sales page. You can sign up here. It's only $67 or whatever. And now the product isn't created yet. The only thing that's created is the sales page, no product. So I'm selling the hope of them getting the product, right? But as soon as that first person purchases, now I'm on the hook. And I have to get it done because November 1st, they're going to show up at 7 p.m. or whatever for that first webinar. And if I'm not ready, I look like an ass publicly. Yay.
Right.
And
that's a good motivator.
Yeah, and that fear really keeps me motivated. And so I've used that product creation method, not just for webinars and videos, but for other things as well. Announcing something on Facebook, like one of my photo series or whatever. Beginning September 1st, I'm going to take a photo a day, every day on this topic. September 1st, they're going to be there looking, oh, let's see what he's doing. And I go great for 10 days and then I stop, rather than risk having to explain why all of a sudden I stop. I just keep going because it's that,
expectation.
Yeah, exactly.
And having that accountability makes a huge difference. So I like that. I think that's a really good tip.
Right.
Put yourself on the hook.
Right.
And so that's a good one. What about self-discipline? In my opinion, you really have to have a why.
Yeah.
Like, why do I want to do this? In order to be self-disciplined, or in order to be motivated enough to get something done.
Right.
Knowing your why is strong. I think obviously you left your career and you started what you're doing now for a reason. You ultimately wanted something more out of life.
Right.
But would you say that you had a really strong vision of that, of what you wanted? Or at first was it just kind of, I want something different, and then it kind of came to you later?
I really wanted to do my own thing. I recognized that I had skill. My first business was a graphic design business. And I recognized that I had skill, I was in demand, I wanted to expand my horizons, I was paid really well where I worked. So that dynamic was a little scary, stepping out on my own. But my income actually increased pretty much every year until the third year when the bottom fell out. But I even recovered from that after I realized I need to do things different. And sometimes a lot of people seem to want to have all their ducks in a row. They want to have everything figured out, and the 1 year, 5 year, 10 year plan, whatever. And if you can do that, that's great. But I think it can also limit your possibilities because you're going to wait forever till you figure that out. Because I have to have my 5 year plan in place. Wrong, because right there's point of procrastination number one. I got to wait until X. No, you don't. You really don't. Or you can get so rigid, this isn't part of my 5 year plan, so I can't take this opportunity. That's a mistake too, because I work from inspiration. I learned a lesson several years ago from a good friend of mine, Joe Vitale, and he said, money loves speed. And whenever you get an idea, take action right then and there until it's done, because you're excited, you have passion, the inspiration is strong, and so if you just hit it quick and get it done, you have a much higher level of success.
Right.
So if you're like, this ain't a part of my 5 year plan, man, I would have lost a lot of income, and I've had some wacky ideas.
Right.
So
that's an interesting thought, because I jumped in, blind with both feet. And absolutely no business experience, or anything like that. My first business was service-based and was, basically like a job, except instead of one boss, I had hundreds of clients or customers. But you learn so much in the process about yourself, about your talents and skills, about your strengths and weaknesses,
Right.
And it was very fluid for me. I really kind of followed technology from the late 90s up to now, and have just kind of followed it progressively. So I liked that it was very fluid, and I was able to just kind of go with the flow and move in different directions as technology changed. So it really depends on your business and on, your business model, your personality, and different things like that. But I agree that planning is definitely a point of procrastination, because I really tend to fly by the seat of my pants, and I get more done than most people plan to do. So good point. Good stuff.
Yeah, and I think reason why is key, like you said. If there's not something driving you, what's the point? But coupled together with that is passion. You know, a lot of people say, you know, you want to pick something you're passionate about. And, you know, if you're passionate about knitting sweaters for iguanas, you might struggle. But
I don't know.
Yeah, maybe. Really tiny niche. But passion is key, because whenever the tough times come, whether you don't feel motivated or life is sucking in the moment or whatever, and that will happen, passion is the thing that pushes you through those times. If you're indifferent about the topic, or you don't really know about the topic, or you think that, oh, this would be a good topic to make money from, yeah, those aren't really good reasons.
That's a good point too, because if you're passionate about it, you can even talk about it in the negative.
Right.
Whereas if you're not passionate about it, it's really hard to come at it from that angle, because you don't have an emotional pull toward the topic,
exactly.
which is really interesting.
Exactly.
I'll tell you, you know, my big why when I first started out is I wanted a different life than the one that I had. I was struggling, you know, young, broke, you know, the whole 9 yards, and absolutely no idea what I was, you know, how I was going to achieve anything in my life. But I wanted a very specific lifestyle. I wanted a specific type of life for my children. And ultimately, I wanted to travel and write books in my 40s.
Right.
And I have achieved that. And I just have to say, it is the absolute best feeling in the world. Of course, now I'm setting new goals. You know, I'm still going to travel and write in my 40s. I'm 39 now, so coming up on that fun decade that I've worked so hard to be exactly in the place I want to be when I got there.
Right.
It's really exciting, you know, to have that strong why, to have that strong vision for yourself, and to do whatever it takes and achieve it, and then find yourself there. It's a good place. Thanks for joining me today, sharing some productivity tips and stuff. I'll leave you guys some links to Tony's Facebook page, his website, so you can keep up with his photos. He's got a road trip thing going on now, so lots of cool photos and lots of cool products and things coming out. So I'll leave you guys some links, and I will see you in the next post.